The year was 1865. While the East tried to mend its wounds from the Civil War, the West remained wild and untamed. It was a land of opportunity, sure, but also hardship, lawlessness, and silence. Rebecca and Matthew were among the dreamers. They set out on the Oregon Trail chasing a new beginning, trying to bury the memories of a war that had torn their world apart. But the frontier had its own kind of cruelty. It didn't care for dreams, and it had no pity for grief. Their journey brought them across sweeping plains and jagged mountain passes, their wagon groaning under the weight of hopes and supplies. They thought they were ready for anything, until they reached the trading post. The sun had just dipped behind the horizon when they arrived. The place looked temporary, half-nailed wood and weathered planks, yet it had been there long enough for the wood to gray and the tension to settle deep. A few settlers lingered near the post, sizing them up with silent eyes. Nearby, a Cheyenne camp stood watchful and still. Rebecca clutched her shawl tighter, uncertain of the people her neighbors had warned her about all her life. Inside the post, smoke and suspicion thickened the air. Voices were clipped, wary. Men leaned against walls and bars, eyes sharp. A harsh word snapped across the room. A gun cocked. Someone shouted. A Cheyenne man stepped forward, hands raised. But it was already too late. The first gunshot cracked through the air. Then came the chaos. Smoke, screams, flying wood. Rebecca ducked as bullets cut through the room like knives. The sharp sting of gunpowder burned her throat. Matthew lunged toward her, and then he staggered. One hand clutched his chest. He fell. "No!" she screamed, crawling toward him as bullets whizzed overhead. His eyes met hers, wide, pained. Then slowly they closed. She couldn't stay. The ground was soaked in blood. Matthew's blood. Their dream shattered in seconds. With nothing left but grief, Rebecca grabbed what she could carry and stepped into the wilderness. Alone, cold, lost. The days that followed were cruel. Every shadow seemed to whisper his name. Every breath ached. She held onto memories even as they broke her. The laughter, the plans, the promises now gone. Then came the storm. It roared in without warning. Howling winds tearing through trees and blinding snow swallowing the trail. She stumbled, slipping on wet roots and ice-crusted rocks, her boots soaked, hands numb. And then, she saw him, a man slumped beneath a tree, blood pooling in the snow beneath him. A Cheyenne warrior, alone, wounded. Fear gripped her. Everything she'd been taught said to run, but something in her stopped. He was barely breathing, human, hurting. She crept closer, voice trembling. "Can you hear me?" His eyes flickered open, dark and cautious. He spoke, words in a language she didn't understand, but the tone wasn't threatening. It was pleading. Rebecca tore strips from her petticoat and bound his wounds. He didn't resist, just watched her. And when she was done, he nodded. That nod changed everything. Days passed. They walked in silence. Two strangers bound by necessity and loss. She didn't know his name at first, but the way he moved through the land told her he had always belonged here. When the storm cleared, they reached a river swollen and violent. Rebecca hesitated. "We can't cross this," she said, voice thin with fear. He said nothing, just pointed, his expression calm, unwavering. Together they tied their supplies to a crude raft and stepped into the icy current. Halfway across, the water stole her footing. She slipped beneath the surface. In an instant he grabbed her, held firm. His hands, steady as the land itself, pulled her upright. They collapsed on the other side, soaked and shivering. "I thought I was done for," she gasped. He gave the faintest smile, tapped his chest. "Strong," he said. Later, the forest offered another threat. A bear, massive, silent until it stepped into their path. Its eyes locked on them like judgment. Rebecca froze. Hawkeye, not his real name, but the one she came to know him by, raised his bow, calm and focused. One arrow struck the bear's shoulder. It roared and charged. Another shot, this one to the chest. The beast faltered, roared again, then fell. Rebecca dropped to her knees, shaking. "Is this what life out here is like?" she whispered. He nodded. Yes. The next challenge came with the snow. Bitter, sharp winds and skies as gray as stone. They built a shelter beneath a grove of trees, their hands numb, their breath shallow. Inside the makeshift tent of branches and fabric, they huddled close. Rebecca trembled violently. He removed his fur-lined cloak and placed it over her. "You'll freeze," she protested, teeth chattering. He shook his head, tapped his chest again. "Strong." She stared at him. "You keep saying that, but I'm not. I'm not strong." His voice came softly in Cheyenne, a language she still didn't understand, but this time she didn't need to. His eyes, his tone, his presence said everything. And for the first time since Matthew's death, she felt safe. The storm passed, but danger never wandered far in the frontier. It came again at dusk, in the form of 3 ragged men. Bandits, faces weathered by violence, hearts hardened by desperation. Hawkeye had spotted their tracks earlier. He led Rebecca deeper into the forest, jaw tight, eyes scanning. But the men found them. "Hand it over." The leader snarled, gun aimed squarely at Hawkeye. "Whatever you've got. Maybe we let you live." Rebecca's hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. "We don't have anything worth taking." The man grinned, cruel and slow. "That's where you're wrong, sweetheart." He stepped closer, too close, and before Rebecca could react, Hawkeye moved. A blur of motion. He knocked the gun away just as it fired. The crack of the shot echoed like thunder. Another bandit rushed Rebecca. She reached for the only weapon she had, a thick branch, and swung with all her strength. Connected with the man's jaw. He fell, groaning, cursing. In seconds, the fight was over. Hawkeye stood over the leader, knife at his throat, voice low and lethal. He spoke in Cheyenne, calm, firm, final. The meaning was clear. Leave or die. The bandits ran, vanishing into the woods, their curses swallowed by the trees. Rebecca dropped to her knees, breath ragged. Hawkeye turned to her, checking for wounds. She managed a breathless laugh. "I never thought I'd stand up to a man like that." Her smile faltered. "Matthew would have been proud of me." Hawkeye gave a single nod, as if to say, "I am too." The days passed slower after that. They walked through frost and pine, through valleys painted in white silence. Then the time came. Rebecca stood at the edge of the forest, beyond which the trail west continued, toward a town, toward settlers, toward what once was her future. She hesitated. "I don't want to leave," she whispered, her voice raw. Hawkeye didn't speak. He stepped close and gently placed a hand over her heart, then his own. A gesture, promise, that whatever had grown between them, trust, strength, something more, it would remain even as paths diverged. Tears blurred her vision, but she didn't turn back. She walked forward, stronger than before, not because she had escaped pain, but because she had walked through it with someone who saw her not as weak, but as resilient. Rebecca's journey didn't end when she stepped out of the woods. She carried with her the silence of snowstorms, the howl of wind, the memory of arrows and firelight. She carried the lessons Hawkeye never said aloud, that survival was more than enduring. It was becoming. She had lost everything she once thought she needed to live, but she had gained something far more valuable. Resilience, trust, the knowledge that even in the harshest of places, there are people who will walk beside you when you fall, people you least expect. Hawkeye was never meant to be part of her story, but he became the reason it kept going. Their bond wasn't built on words, but on firelight, storms, and shared silence, on watching each other survive, and knowing that neither had to do it alone anymore. So what do we take from this? Maybe it's this: the frontier wasn't just a place. It was a test, a forge, and those who crossed it didn't just chase land or freedom. They earned something rarer, proof that they could endure anything. And sometimes, just sometimes, in the places we least expect, someone helps us find the strength we didn't know we had. If the story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Because stories like this of survival, trust, and unexpected connection deserve to be remembered